And it'll take a moment as people start rolling in. All right, welcome to those of you rolling in. Give it a second as the kind of give it a moment to populate. Thank you for those of you coming to spend the evening with us. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and to use the chat function throughout to talk to each other, talk to us. And please use the Q&A section to ask questions that are that we can collect for at the end and hopefully get a chance to answer. So we'll get going in just a minute, and the whole thing will be recorded. It will be available later on the CNPS YouTube. And since you registered to be here, you'll get an email afterwards with links to the resources, and we'll go ahead and include a link to the recording as well. So feel free to keep using the chat throughout. There's a lot of knowledge in this room. There's always people who have amazing experience to draw from, and feel free in the Q&A to put things that we'll gather towards the end. I'm Anne Marie. I'm the Horticulture Stewardship Programs Manager for CNPS's statewide office staff. And Kristen is here with us from Native West Nursery. And we have Peter from San Francisco Department of the Environment with the Biodiverse City shirt going, representing the chapter out there. So we're going to talk about a bunch of resources tonight that you can use to kind of help narrow down the right plants and the right resources for your garden, depending on where you're at. And we're going to go ahead and start with Kristen.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Introductions first. My name is Kristen Cotter. I'm the retail coordinator for Native West Nursery down in San Diego. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty. All right, so I'm going to do a little talk about selecting native plants for Southern California. Like I said, we're Native West Nursery. We're located in South San Diego, south of Imperial Beach, about as far south as you can go in San Diego. Native West Nursery, you may know us as Recon. We've been open since 2003. We're a 130-acre nursery located in South San Diego. We have a really large on-hand inventory. Our primary clients are landscape architects, restoration companies, government projects, and landscape contractors. We do custom seed collection services for restoration projects and seed farming, which is a new part of our business. We're a trusted source for consulting, advice, plan checking, and feedback. We recently, within the past year, opened up the Little Barn, which is our retail space. That was my project. They brought me on board to open the retail store. We began in May of 2023, so 1 year and 1 month. We have over 100 species of native plants in stock. Our entire inventory is not at the retail store, but it is available for purchase. You can find my email information on the website and email me if there's anything you don't see on the inventory that you want to check if we have. You can shop in person for plants, seeds, and merchandise, talk with plant experts like me, and stay connected, join our newsletter, hop on our website. It's a really great place. We're open Thursday through Saturday. So we kind of noticed a bit of a trend with a lot of our customers coming to us with questions about how to select native plants for Southern California. We would get people coming in saying that they found a list of suggested plants in a book. They found some plants online, but they either can't find those species at their local nurseries, or they find those species only to find out that they don't do well in a Southern California garden. And to kind of help our customers and the general public kind of figure out how to purchase plants and how to make good decisions for your garden based on where you are, we put together a plant database of our own. Currently, it's 50 plants. It's species that we usually have in stock and that we know perform well in Southern California. Patrick is our sales manager. He's been working with Native West for 12 years. Every time he sends plants to a contractor or a project, he'll periodically check in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years later to ask those contractors, how did that project go? How did those plants do? Does it still look good? Did you have to replace anything? And through those years of data gathering, we kind of created this list of plants that we think does really well for the Southern California garden. We prioritized this list, and the number one priority to make it onto our plant database was survivability and hardiness. Something Patrick frequently says that I've adopted is an alive plant looks a lot better than a dead plant. So that's the number one category that we start with. The next one is aesthetics. Not everyone loves dormancy. I love dormancy. A lot of people love dormancy, but for a lot of beginners and new gardeners, dormancy can be a scary word. So a lot of the plants on this list, either you can go around dormancy or they don't really have too much of a summer dormancy. And then water tolerance. Species that can tolerate maybe being watered a little bit more in the summertime. They're not gonna totally kick the bucket if you accidentally water them in the middle of August. A lot of these species are hardy and can tolerate being even in a normal garden setting if you're just getting started and switching from traditional plants to ornamentals. So I'll switch to our lovely website. Anna was supposed to be my co-host. She is not feeling well today, and she built this entire website from scratch. And so I'm giving her kudos for this. It's a beautiful new website. And you can go to our resources tab and our plant database. So the plant database, you can filter and sort either by, you can type in the name if you know the species that you're looking for, or you can filter by plant type. I'm going to select shrub, and then I want an evergreen, and I have full sun. And what that kind of does is narrows down our list of plants to species within that category. All of these plants we found tolerate full sun, our evergreen, and our shrubs. We'll go ahead and do the Abutilon palmeri. This is one of my favorites. It's kind of a San Diego hyperlocal, local to Anza Borrego Desert. We have our characteristics, the things that would be important to you, the height, the width, dormancy, growth rate. And our photos, we're trying to add more as we continue to build this site, but we have photos of this plant in the garden. I took this photo of my neighbor's house. I thought it looked absolutely beautiful. We have the plants in May. We have the plants in August to kind of give you an idea of what they look like throughout the year. And we're going to continue to build that for all the other species. We have overview, hardiness, care and maintenance, kind of the generic things that you would look for when you're looking at plants. But one thing that we wanted to add was our anecdotal experience. A lot of the people that work at our nursery have a lot of these plants in their yard. So we added their anecdotal experience. How does it do for you? It's easy to grow, grows really fast to the first 3 feet. We found it tolerates pruning really, really well. And after the second winter, you don't need to water it. So all tips that we've gathered from contractors, people that work at our nursery, and what we've seen over time. We also, you can check our retail availability and our wholesale availability. If you want to buy 10,000 of them, that's totally fine. We can make that happen. And one other cool part, underneath each plant, we allow for comments. They are moderated, so you have to be approved to get them posted. But the comments are really cool. We can see Denise, she has one by the coast. It's a desert plant, but it does very well coastally. She has hers planted in heavy clay soil, and it doesn't seem to mind since she has it on a slope. Maybe you're like Denise and have heavy clay soil on a slope, and this could be the plant for you. We're building this feature out and going to continue to add species as we get more information from our customers and some of the trials that we're running as well. A couple other cool resources that we've built out. We have some really wonderful guides for people to check out. Some of my favorites are the quick start guide, how to get started with a native plant garden, the quick and easy version, a section on planning and plant selection, planting, watering. The dormancy guide is one of my favorites. I wrote that one. And then it's really easy to ask us questions. I get emails all the time from people asking, how does this work? How does this plant do? And we have a lot of information at the nursery, so it's really great to be able to share that with people. And then our last resource are our plant lists. These are lists already put together for you. One of my favorites is the native alternatives to traditional ornamentals. We share this one a lot with our landscape contractors, HOAs, residents who are trying to make switches from traditional ornamental plants to California natives. There's a list for habitat restoration if you're trying to do that, and our native landscaping favorites, which are 50 top picks. And that's kind of my little rundown. We'll save questions for the end, I guess.
Thanks, Kristen. We'll save questions. We'll collect them at the end here. And if you've got questions on any of these, if you put them in the Q&A, we'll collect them there and talk. And if they're in the chat, continue talking to each other and you can answer them there as well. So we've heard about from Kristen, and a lot of yours are very hyper local to where you're at. But you also cover throughout the state in different areas, in different ways for at least your wholesale, right?
Yeah, wholesale is, we do a lot of shipping up to San Francisco. We sell everywhere within the state. A lot of our guides and resources, we focused on San Diego and Southern California, but we're definitely wanting to expand and continue with that information as we go forward.
Great. Well, thank you for that. We'll answer some of these questions at the end then. And we're going to move a little bit further north and a little bit foggier and talk about the biodiversity piece with Peter from San Francisco. Oh, I think you're mute still, Peter.
My bad. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, and great to hear about what you're doing down there, Kristen. That is really impressive, the scale of your operation. Wow. So I just double checked on Google. We're moving well over 500 miles north now up to San Francisco. Actually, I'm in Marin right now because I live in Marin, and so that's a little bit north of San Francisco. So actually where I am, it's hot the last couple of days because in the lee of Mount Tamalpais, but in the city, indeed, at the Golden Gate, it's very foggy. So it's a quite different climate than a lot of the rest of California in the summer, as many of you know. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to do some toggling the way that Kristen did. So we'll get rolling here. Let me get to the right screen, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, I'll go like that. All right, everybody see my slide number 1? Are we thumbs up? Everybody see that? Okay.
You can.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I've been using this image as my interest slide for presentations recently because it sort of encapsulates aspects of what I do. So I'm going to be talking to you about the city at large, the tool called the San Francisco Plant Finder, and our work generally, and how we apply that, and the context of our work generally promoting nature and biodiversity in the city. I also have the good fortune of working out on Yerba Buena Island and Treasure Island as an on-the-ground restoration ecologist supporting the city agency that manages the work out there. And so that's the upper picture there. That's a brand new stormwater garden planted with all local native plants. And then I also get us involved in various California and international biodiversity collaborations and networks. So I had the good fortune of going to Montreal to COP15 at the end of 2022. And I've been with the Environment Department since 2012, but I've been working on restoration and stewardship of nature in San Francisco for 30 years. This is my anniversary year. I started out at the Presidio with the National Park Service in the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And then I founded a nonprofit called Nature in the City, and then I started working for the city city government. So that's me, and I'll start moving on through the slides. I'm going to kind of give you a kind of an overview context of the city a bit, and then we'll move into how the plant finder came about, and we'll talk about the plant finder, and then we'll get on the website and check that out. So this is just a slide to sort of encapsulate the way that we're framing what we're saying, hey, this is how you can engage with nature in San Francisco. Find the wild, tend the wild, grow the wild. So go out there and learn about nature, get involved in all the amazing stewardship opportunities that are happening on a weekly and a monthly basis, and then find local native plants and plant them in your garden, in your local streetscape project with your neighbors, etc. So that's grow the wild. And so that's SF environment. And then this is basically the Wild in the City poster that was created in 1992, which sort of shows San Francisco going back to time immemorial prior to colonization, when the Ramaytush Ohlone were here for many thousands of years. And so you can see it's a windswept tip of the peninsula, of course, as many of you know, with sand dunes and grasslands and scrublands, but also some oak woodlands and riparian corridors. So it was a very biodiverse place on the planet. And then, of course, the image on the right shows the modern day in the 90s. And so all you see in that map that has any color is what remains of that ancient natural environment. And so we've used this as a tool to educate the public for many years. This is just a wonderful image from the late 19th century of the dunes before they were built upon out on the west side of the city. Just gives you a sense of the wild landscape as it was, and as it is to some degree in parts of the city, as you'll see. This is a really cool project that the San Francisco Estuary Institute did. They're a regional educational research, really a research behemoth in the Bay Area, and they did a historical ecology of San Francisco. So this was with very detailed research, looking back and learning what all the different habitats were on the tip of the peninsula. So you can see there on the right, the key shows you incredible diversity of what we had here historically. We have some of this still, but certainly not all these colors are represented in terms of the habitat types anymore. And so that brings us to today, where we do still have these wonderful little bits of natural areas in the city, are kind of fragments of hilltops that were saved by citizen action all through the decades. This is Bernal Heights, south of Mission, of the Mission District. That's the San Francisco General Hospital right there. And then this is up on Twin Peaks, where the Mission Blue Butterfly flies. Right above the Castro District. This is Bayview Hill in the southwest corner of the city, with some local coastal poppies with the yellow and the little orange middle, and some coastal buckwheat growing there in the foreground. And then you can see McLaren Park in the background and its southeastern grasslands, which is our second largest city park in San Francisco. And so this is the map that we created with a collaboration among many entities to basically portray to the best that we could kind of the state of nature in San Francisco now. This is the third edition, which we did in 2018, and really presents a little more textured, nuanced view of the status of nature in San Francisco than the kind of right side of that Wild in the City map, which was very stark. So this shows you kind of the urban forestry layer that reflects the urban tree canopy in the streets and in the backyards, et cetera. And then also, of course, portrays the parks and the natural areas, which is what we call the dark green on the map. And so this is the San Francisco that we live in today, with all its richness. But of course, all of that is also very threatened. This is a snapshot in time, incredible diversity, but with 800,000 people living in this small space with all these critters, we obviously have to continue to fight to keep them all here. But we do have, despite the city being 95% developed, there are some incredible numbers representing our biodiversity hotspot within a hotspot. So 500 species of native plants, which is incredible to think about considering the size of the city, and for the whole state it's 6,500 species, 35 species of breeding butterflies. And so we want to bring all this rich biodiversity that remains in our natural areas that we still have into the built environment. And so this is a, kind of a rendition of what we're trying to do in the streetscapes as we build out more nature-filled neighborhoods in San Francisco. You can see cenotes in the foreground, for example, there. And a great project application of this that we're working on is something called the Tigers on Market. This is a project promoted by Nature in the City, the organization that I founded, but that I no longer run since I've been working for the city now, as I said, for 11 years. But it's a pretty amazing phenomenon where our largest native butterfly in the city, the tiger swallowtail, flies down Market Street, lays her eggs on London plane trees that are planted all over the place. And so we really need to get their nectar sources all over the streetscape as well, so that they can be supported in their life cycle. And so this is a kind of a sort of an imaginary future San Francisco, but what kinds of plants are those, right? We don't want ivy and other sort of useless green plants draped all over our buildings. We want to create habitat, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. And so the San Francisco Plant Finder came about as a result of this project called Green Connections, which was a plan that was created by the planning department. And here's a better image of the, oops, oh, there it is. Yep. Of the map and the routes. And so this was really a social science project. These are not like kind of biologically or ecologically science-based proposed ecological corridors. These are more like, how do we get people safely from where they live to parks and natural areas, in relation to schools and in relation to environmental justice communities, et cetera. So this is a really cool plan that has a lot of really great stuff in it in terms of how do you make these corridors for pedestrians and bicyclists. And then each of the corridors has kind of a totem native species that we assign to that we sort of assign to that corridor, not randomly, but also, it's not perfect science in terms of like, oh yeah, this is exactly where this species is or should be in the city. So it's really in part meant to be inspiration. But that's what inspired the San Francisco Plant Finder. And let's see, I'm trying to go to the next one. Yep. And so within the Green Connections family of products, there are these ecology guides. So for each route, there was a kind of a guide for what plants would be recommended to be planted along that route. These routes are not sort of being implemented as such. This is really a kind of an inspirational vision for what we can do all over the city. And it's a guide for when the MTA and the PUC and public works departments are doing work that along these routes, they should be taking this into account. And this is where we can prioritize doing this work. And in fact, in the Green Connections plan, though it wasn't really a ecology plan, it was more of a, like I said, a plan for people. We do have these cool principles for promoting biodiversity. So then out of this came the Plant Finder, and I should just say that a lot of this work that we do is collaborative with all of our other city departments. The planning department are the one in the upper right there, the ones who we worked very closely and still work closely with on the Plant Finder, but then several others that I mentioned already contributed to the work on the Plant Finder. So this is our business card that we hand out, and then this is the backside. So this is really what we're trying to do with the Plant Finder, is provide this resource for folks to find plants to plant in their neighborhood. And it was really and then this is the homepage. It was quite a long project initially to get it all off the ground. I used a lot of interns. It was a lot of really grinding grunt work to get all the data. We used an Access database originally to get all the data together. And then I can't really speak to the technical back end. My colleague at the planning department would be able to do that. And so if you're interested in the technical aspect, you can reach out to me and we can connect you with him. So then we worked closely to figure out what was the best user interface and what was most interesting to folks. And so the website definitely evolved over time. And so there's these various different city lists city plant lists that already existed. And so we have all those highlighted here on the map. So the Public Works Department has a Thrifty 150 list that they use for when they plant plants in the street environment, and then a sidewalk landscaping list, and of course the annual street tree list that we put together. The San Francisco Public Utilities Commission has a stormwater plant list. And so, but what we really wanted to do in terms of obviously creating habitat was promote native plants. So all those pre-existing city lists have a lot of natives, but it's not necessarily the focus per se. And so we ultimately really settled on, when you come to this website, you go straight to the SF Natives tab, and I'll give you a demonstration here in a moment. I probably should do that shortly. And these are actually just some screenshots of the website. So I think what I'll do is I'll just go, and I'll just show you that we did get some press. I don't actually know what the date was. I found this in my files, but this was really cool. This is Patrick Brump, who works for Literacy for Environmental Justice Ledge, and that is a really amazing local nonprofit organization which works in the southeastern part of San Francisco, so an environmental justice community, Bayview Hunters Point. They've been around since the 90s, and they've just doubled the size of their native plant nursery at Candlestick State Park. And so it's a wonderful program and a great operation. And so they were highlighted along with this tool, the San Francisco Plant Finder tool that we created several years ago. And I'll talk about other nurseries in the city in a moment too. But let me go back to the actually here I'm gonna go like this, and then I'm just gonna go over to the Plant Finder, and I think we're there. So some of you can all still see this still. So this is the website, and you can take a little tour. It's not much of a tour, but there's a little button here to take a quick tour to learn about how to use it. So there's a few pop-ups that help you with that. And so just to give you a general overview of it, so you can click here, and we'll do that to create a list. And so I think and when you first enter it, it automatically clicks on it. It brings the San Francisco natives list down here. So right now we have 212 species that are San Francisco natives. So that's out of the 500 that I mentioned before that we still have in San Francisco. And then we tag all the plants with a San Francisco native tag or a California native tag. So obviously anything that's a San Francisco native is a California native, but not necessarily vice versa. And then all plants, let's see, we have 650 plants in the database. So then if you go from 650 and then you click on California native, and you get 363. So those other whatever is 150 species that aren't San Francisco natives are going to be a lot of Southern California natives as well, of course. And it seems to me that the Southern California natives tend to be in the trade a bit more than maybe our Northern California endemics, although there's crossover of them, of course. So let's see. So you can also click on the map. I clicked outside. Let's click inside San Francisco. Okay, so I just clicked kind of right into the heart of the city, and we got this list of plants. So the way that we did the geography on here, you know, it's not super sophisticated in terms of, oh, this is definitely the right plant for this exact spot. So don't think that it's that incredible, but it was a way to be able to use the map. And it definitely has some utility, but as you all know, hopefully as many of you know, and maybe some of you will learn from us tonight, it's all about the right plant in the right place. So we talk about drought tolerant, sometimes equating with planting natives, but of course that's not totally true, because we have native wetland species, we have native riparian species, right, that grow along creeks and rivers. And we have species that grow on the north-facing slopes where it's shadier and where they can survive, where they're happy with less solar radiation, and actually they need more moisture retention in that aspect versus this south-facing slope. So there's a lot of variability, as you know, in California with the plants, and so it's definitely important to know that you're planting your plant in the right place. But if you're looking for all totally drought tolerant, then we've clicked on that location on the map and it says 273 species. Just checking the time. I think I'm okay. Let me know, Anne-Marie. And then we can say, oh, this is full sun, and let's see. Oh yeah, it requires no water. So that gets us down to 107 plants, which is still quite a bit. And really, to me, no water means after the first year, right? You want to get it established. you want to get it through your first dry season, and into your second winter. Now, with many native plants that are upland native plants that aren't, if you plant a riparian species in an upland location, then you're going to need to water it. But if you plant an upland plant in an upland location, very often, if you plant it at the beginning of the winter, that's it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's really what we mean by no water needs. And then, then there's plants with moderate water needs. So if we go back to SF natives, we'll start with the 212 SF natives, and we say moderate water needs. Those are really species that do actually need definitely to be planted in the right place, right? So you got maidenhair fern, box elder, which is kind of a riparian tree. You got sedges and rushes and things here that that need water. But that's not to say that you need to water them. Depending, if you plant them in a low lying place in your yard where there's water collecting, then you may not need to water them, because basically they might be wetland plants, but they're also designed to survive 6 months with no rain. So that's what also makes them, they're drought tolerant in essence, even though they're wetland species, right? They just have to have that water in the ground that's remaining there throughout the season. So let's see, what else can we do? Why don't we start with the stormwater list? That's 183 plants, so that's from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. So like if I'm complying with the stormwater ordinance, which has certain criteria, when you do a big renovation or you build a new building, you have to capture all your stormwater on the site of your property. And so folks are then going there and they're complying with that, and they're finding this information. Oh, this is the plant list that they share for ideas. But then you can come and you can get that plant list on the plant finder, and you can say, well, actually, I want all San Francisco natives from that stormwater plant list. And so then that gets you down to 115. So there's a lot of choices there. And then you can decide, well, I don't want any trees, so I just want grasses and perennials and shrubs. And so that brings it down to 91 plants. So still a lot of choices. And then we also have I think we have where is the, oh, we have a roof option. So, and these are all going to be small, right? 38 plants. So I think that supersedes the other clicks that I made on shrubs, because I don't think any of these are are good sized shrubs. California sagebrush does not get that big. So these are all plants that would be appropriate to plant on a roof if you're doing a rooftop garden in San Francisco. So let's see. So that's kind of going through. And then, oh, I forgot to mention, I'll just mention before I show you a couple other pages just with resources. You can, once you've determined that these are this is the plant list that you want, you can print it. And this is the little print screen. And so then you can print that out and take to the nursery if you need some help. And then I'm trying to find my other feature here. It's not jumping right out at me, so that's all right. We do have a shopping feature, but for some reason I'm not seeing it at the moment. So I'm just going to show you. Let's see. Okay, I can move this around. Yep, and then so we have an about page, which just introduces you to what this is all about, talks about the Green Connections project, and then you can download the whole data set of the plant finder. If you want, you can get more information by emailing us. And then the glossary explains all these terms that are, on the tool itself. So what is going on with these approved city lists? What are those? And then soil type and plant type and street trees and what, just information about all those different aspects. Just trying to get this out of my way. Okay. And then, so that's the glossary. Yep. So I mentioned that. And then the resources. And this is really, a lot of different information, bits of information, and lots of different organizations. Basically tried to keep this very coherent to San Francisco and the Bay Area and California to a degree, of course, because we're part of the Mediterranean climate of California, so you see a bunch of sort of California organizations in here. So we got organizations and programs, and then guidelines and policies, and this is all local to San Francisco, of course. And then our local native plant nurseries. So I mentioned Candlestick State Park, where Ledge has their nursery. So that's Literacy for Environmental Justice down here. Larner Seeds is up in Bolinas and Marin. And then there's Go Native Nursery, which is down in Montara in San Mateo County. East Bay has a couple of native plant nurseries. East Bay Wilds. Bay Natives is a retail nursery down in the southeast. And then Mission Blue Nursery is actually located in Brisbane. So that's at the base of San Bruno Mountain, so also in San Mateo County. Native Here Nursery, which is run by the East Bay chapter of CNPS, which is over in Berkeley. And then Oaktown Native Plant Nursery is a cool little nursery in Berkeley. And then, of course, Sutro Stewards up on Mount Sutro behind the UCSF Parnassus campus. They have a native plant nursery as part of their organization there. And then the Watershed Nursery in Richmond, California, which is a really great nursery, kind of bigger in scale than most of these. They do a lot of contract growing and also have really great BMPs for Phytophthora, the really bad disease that's affecting our native plants and our native plant nurseries, et cetera. So I think that's probably my time, Anne Marie. I'm just going to go back to I'll just quickly, you can interrupt me when you're ready, but I can also quickly show an example of things that are going on. So this is, again, back to the dark green. These are the natural areas, just sort of in stark contrast to the rest of the city. And so this is what we're trying to do is, green up all the gray with biodiversity. And an interesting note, this came up, I gave a walk for Friends of the Urban Forest yesterday in Golden Gate Park, and someone was asking about, planting lupin for the Mission Blue butterfly. And I think that comes up a lot because it's federally listed endangered. And so, let's save the butterfly. But it flies up on Twin Peaks, up on top of the hill, and it's in an island, basically. And so if you plant, your lupin, the varicolored lupin or the sky lupin down in Noe Valley or in the Castro or somewhere, 2 miles away, that little butterfly is never going to find that lupin. And if they do, it'll be a sink. They'll never make their way back to the habitat. Whereas with our local green hairstreak butterfly, another local native butterfly, it actually exists in this one location in San Francisco in a corridor of 4 natural areas that you can see there on the right. And then there's these little numbers. And so Nature in the City has this flagship project called the Green Hairstreak Corridor. And this actually does help the butterfly. We planted out all the dune habitat, including the coast buckwheat, which is the larval food plant for the green hairstreak. And the next year, the plants were mature. The butterfly was already laying her eggs in these little patches of public works, formerly derelict land. And this is in this corridor among these 4 episodic, natural areas. And so that actually does work to provide habitat for the green hairstreak. So I think my time's up, so I'll stop there.
That was really cool. Thanks. And thanks for the pictures of the butterfly at the end.
Totally.
How pretty are those?
Sharing.
All right. We're going to go into Calscape. Then we're going to look at Las Politas and then wrap it up with answering some of these questions. All right. I'm going to go share my screen here on Calscape. Hopefully you've all seen the new Calscape, but I'm going to run through some features that if you haven't used Calscape much, you may not have found, or you may not have found on the new Calscape yet. So Calscape is a native plant database at its core. It is an amazing place to go in and to search all kinds of California native plants here. And you can search them by type, by location. You can choose one in particular. I know that we had a question on bristlecones. And apparently I'm not spelling it right.
Maybe all
it
one
does. Yeah, it might want it as one word. Oh, there we go. All right. We had a question on bristlecones. So you can type in a plant. You can go into any plant that you're interested in, and you can find out, you can check, it'll have multiple photos available of the plant. You can look at its native habitats. You can see what type of size it will get to, whether it's an evergreen, common uses, forms. It'll give you a whole description about them. What does it need? Partial sun on this one, moderate water, cold tolerance. You've got the soil pH, the propagation. We've got all kinds of pieces here. Sorry, and I've also got allergies going on. So sorry about that part. One of the problems with everything growing in California is for those of us who are allergic to all of it. So you can find native plants and you can find them very specific to where you are. You can go into a large city and you can choose that you want it at a relatively local nursery and you want it to be extremely low water. You want it to be super easy care because who are we kidding? It's not going to get a lot of attention once we're happy that it's in there. And we want it to be happy for all the birds and the bees and the butterflies and the hummingbirds. And you can apply that. And oops, maybe I went a little bit too specific. I want all the things and I can have black sage.
That's
Most
cool
of the time
plan.
it'll give me a lot more pieces. But you can go in and you can find all these pieces and you can find what nurseries they carry them at. So you can go in, you can find plants, or you can go a different way and you can start by finding nurseries. You can put in the area that you're in, where you're looking from. I'm looking right now from Cazadero area. So if I look from Cazadero, it'll show me what are my closest nurseries. And you've got right here, we've got Cal Flora, we've got Walker Avenue Nursery, or you can search by, we can search and find on here by nursery name, Native West Nursery. And then you can go into the nursery, you can find who to email, who to call, you can get a copy of their, go directly to their website. You can view their inventory. Calscape also has tools for you in designing. You can go into the garden planner and take a look at local guides for each region that have ideas. You can look if you're specifically in the Bay Area or if you're in broader California, you can answer a couple of very key questions and choose what you need. If you're in an HOA, if you're in a big city, if you're, what do you need? And it will give you a whole setup. And you get a plant list, you get design ideas, you get the layouts of the design, you get the number of plants. So Calscape can give you additionally all of these resources for helping you design. And then perhaps our newest and most important part, if you want somebody to help you put it in, if you want somebody to design it, if you want somebody to maintain it, we have a way to find landscape professionals. And if you are a landscape professional, you should be able to put yourself in here fairly easily. But you can make a determination of where they're at by your county. You can decide if they need to be doing, what type of care do you need? Do they need credentialing? We've got a recent California Native Plant Landscaper certification course that goes throughout the state. You can figure out if they need to be, is it a commercial project? Is it residential? Do you want free consultation? Should they speak Spanish? There's a lot of different versions here to help you find, the help that you could use, or if you do this work to put yourself out there. So as we're working with Calscape and these other plant finders, you're often coming up with plant lists and you're falling in love with plants and trying to figure out, any plant list is a starter place. You should be layering it with your soil types, your specific needs, are your ability and interest in maintaining it. But one of my other favorite places to go and look and to layer things is Las Politas. Las Politas is a nursery in the Central Coast area. They do great work, but they have this interesting one where they have leaf burn times of California native plants. And as we're coming into summer, you can go in and you can see what type of plant it is. and literally how long did it take them to catch it on fire? And that's one of the ways that I filter and layer my plant lists with Calscape, or I will filter it and layer it by the parts I need, particularly for habitat values, if you're looking at biodiversity and you know what you want to do. So start it with your plant list that you come out of all these different parts with, and then layer them with the important parts for what you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and go ahead and go to the Q&A, and we're just kind of going to run through some of these. All right. Starting at the top, do any nurseries have bristle cones? I should have shown that when I looked it up. There actually is one in Oakland that was carrying some of the bristle cones. So look up the one you want and try to find that. And hopefully it's the right one that has it. Should Northern California start planting natives from Southern California given climate change, or is that an unhelpful practice? This is one of the topics, this and what is locally native, that you can get people to really throw down on. I would say for the CNPS, our line at this point is that we believe in saving species that are going to go extinct, but we don't believe necessarily that most of what we know for assisted migration is on point yet.
Not supported by science.
Yeah.
There is some research that Matt Ritter at Cal Poly is doing for street trees given climate change, but it's more not really native trees. It's just how the street trees are going to change as climate continues to change, and how we'll have to change those out over time.
Yeah, it's a little more about what will survive rather than what provides the habitat that we're going to need. And okay, we talked about the guides for NorCal natives. I think this was asked when you were speaking, Kristen. And then somebody asked if, what was your website, Kristen?
Yeah, it's nativewest.com. Yeah, I'll throw it in the messages as well.
All right. And if you were going to recommend a few natives for shady areas in Southern California, do you have favorites that you think are bomb-proof? What would you recommend?
I love, I've been in love with the Cleanopodium chandleri, the Yerba Buena. There's like a more hyper local species that I've been really loving for the shade. I also really like, which one is it? Ribes viburnifolium. I really like using that in Southern California shade too. We have a cool hyperlocal species on Spooner's Mesa that has different shaped leaves, which is kind of fun. And that's a great one that I've been recommending because it's very tolerant of a lot of shade.
And we got asked, the Little Barn, Little Barn is retail, right? It's not wholesale like the rest of Native West?
Yeah, Little Barn is retail. You can walk around and browse the plants that we have, and we're currently open Thursday through Saturdays. And if you want to order, if you are a wholesale client, you can still go through the normal methods of contacting Patrick to order wholesale.
Great. And the weather in coastal San Diego, very similar to Monterey County. Do you think plants that thrive there would thrive in coastal Central California?
Yeah, I don't see why not. A lot of the species, we kind of have an emphasis on our guides for some of the plants that we would find more in San Diego, but some of the species that we found that do really well here aren't necessarily from San Diego. They're native to California and would definitely work in other parts of the state as well. I'd say, yeah, there's definitely species that would be able to work in both places. If you go through the filters and the guides to be able to kind of see what we recommend, it would probably work for those conditions as well.
Great. And Las Politas is right in that area too, if you need other horticulturalists that are pretty close by to go and ask questions. Peter, are you involved with the Salesforce building?
Am I? Oh, I didn't see that question. No, but and neither was I involved with the Salesforce Park, which is a beautiful park. It wasn't, I know, exactly designed for habitat, but there are a lot of native plants in there. So obviously it's providing amazing oasis in the middle of downtown for people, no doubt about that. But if I had my druthers, I'd get in there and move few things around, add in a few local natives to get some more habitat going. But it was a landscape architect's dream, that's for sure.
Guerrilla biodiversity. All right, and this is another one for you, Peter. We get this one a lot more for San Francisco. How do you define locally native, and how important is it to plant local natives?
Sure. And this relates back to the question about SoCal versus NorCal too, of course. But I mean, everything's local native in a sense, right? With some exceptions. I mean, that's what's amazing about California, is it's so heterogeneous, so much topographical diversity, and mountains and deserts and everything. So, among so many of our genuses, we have countless species, right? And so like every single mountain around the bay has its own manzanita endemic to the mountain. I'm overstating it a bit, but it's practically like that. And so and there's so little we do know about wildlife and plant interactions. And so to me, it's about having a level of awe and respect for what is happening, there in that place, and planting for the critters that have been there and evolving with the local natives there. Now, it's not to say that, I'm not going to plant. In fact, in my own yard here in San Anselmo, which is friggin' hot, and I have another anecdote about that, I have all of the Southern California sages planted on my driveway facing southwest, because I never have to give them any water ever, right? The Clevelandii, the Leucophila, the Brandegii, all these are all endemic to Southern California. They don't come anywhere near here in the wild. But overall, where I am, I'm basically trying to restore my own property to be, seamless with the natural environment. So yeah, I think it's really important. And you think about a generalist versus specialist, right? Like, sure, there's lots of generalist wildlife, like Anna swallowtail butterfly lays her eggs on anise, on fennel. So there are plenty of species that are able to move over to non-natives or whatever. But then there are lots of species such as the mission blue butterfly or the green hair streak that are restricted to the species that they have co-evolved with. So that's what makes local native really important.
Yeah, and in areas that have a lot of different soil, weather patterns all in such a small space, you get a lot of really hyper local natives. And Kristen's been talking about some of the hyper locals. They are too. All right, what resources do we recommend for folks in the East Bay, specifically like the Berkeley Hills? I would start by saying the CNPS chapter in the area has people who are really, really knowledgeable. And they also have a nursery. And beyond that nursery, there are a couple of really great nurseries in that region. And it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for information on plants, there are a lot of really small nurseries around there that can get really specific and answer your questions. There's also a native plant nursery associated with the East Bay parks right in your hills. Any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just going to put a couple links in the chat just to piggyback on your comment.
Great. And we had somebody who asked if we can put the San Francisco map resources link in the follow-up email. And I think we'll definitely try and do that.
Sure, I can put that in the chat too.
Great. Peter's adding resources as we go. Kristen, does Native West Nursery website have a list for plants that do well in swales that collect like laundry and gray water? And
that's a guide that we actually would like to write. One of my coworkers has a swale, and I can list a couple plants really quick that I know do well in his. Cercocarpus speculoides does strangely really well in his gray water swale, and I think he has a Heteromeles Davis Gold that's doing surprisingly well too. But that's something we'd like to write a guide for going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, gray water plants, something that can take the salinity and some of the other nutrients that come along with it.
Search, but we're still adding guides and stuff. So I'll talk to my coworker about getting something about that up. So that'd be great.
All right. Let's see. What are your top native street trees from Marin County, California? I picked it because street trees are a hard one.
That's a great question. I haven't created that list, so I mean, I know what grows in my neighborhood in San Anselmo, where was hot as hell the last 2 days. Valley oak, coast live oak, redwood is here as well. Of course, bay laurel, California black walnut. So those, I mean, it's incredible. We've got box elder. What else do we have right here in the neighborhood on my own property, actually? Of course, California buckeye. So those are all good examples. And a lot of those depend on, you know, having enough space for like a coast live oak or a buckeye for its canopy to, you know, grow out. So that's why sometimes they're recommended against planting those, you know, in a narrow sidewalk in the very urban situation. But I think there's a lot of opportunities lost by planting just miscellaneous non-native trees, you know, again and again that don't have any habitat value. So yeah, let's push for more native trees in the urban environment. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a cat that appeared briefly on screen.
It's
All
meowing,
right.
and so she goes.
So I put the links, yeah, to the nurseries just up there a ways, Kim. So you should, if you just scroll up in the chat or in the chat, you should see them there. And then Nature in the City sells the map. If you happen to run into me in person, I can give you a map for free because I have a couple boxes of them, but you can buy them from Nature in the City. Maybe they're selling them for $10. It is a beautiful map, so it's worth the $10 for sure.
Great. If you want to find an arborist, regardless of where you're at, you can look them up by in the Calscape professionals directory there. And hopefully, since it's just started, it's not as full as it will get. So if you work in that field, please add yourself in there, and we'll keep recruiting to get people into there. I see some recommendations for Calscape, and I'll definitely pass that on to our team doing it. We're coming up on 6:30, and we like to be prompt and to make sure we respect everyone's time, but we appreciate you being here. This has been recorded, and in a couple days you'll get a follow-up email with a link to the recording. That'll take you also to our YouTube with other ones you can watch, and we'll send links to a lot of these different pieces.
Fantastic. So I have a quick anecdote. I have a Rhus intergraphifolia in my yard that I bought in a local nursery here in Fairfax, which is a coastal scrub plant in Southern California, right? So it takes a lot of fog and not super hot in the summer because it's right on the coast. However, here in San Anselmo, it's hot as hell, like I just said. But in the winter, we get so much rain that it's kind of like, oh my God, stop. So it's kind of funky. It's not really, you know, so there's these nuances where you think you can bring it up from Southern California, but when it's a total coastal, you know, fog belt plant, even with less rain, yeah, it's a different thing. So there's definitely a lot of nuances.
Totally. And the genetics too, something, you know, you from Southern California, even if you can find it up north, if the genetics are from Southern California, it's not going to like that extra water at all.
Right. Exactly.
And it might become a whole different plant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone.
Take it easy.
Bye.